Hi everyone, back here for the afternoon session of Rutgers and JIT Scicomm broadcast that we're doing here live at the dual campuses of Rutgers University and JIT. So for those of you who are wanting to follow along, go to the Scicomm Monday account for further broadcasts and to engage with us that way. Make sure you follow along with the hashtag because we're putting everything on this Scicomm trip under the Rutgers and JIT Scicomm hashtag. And then if you want to engage with me later, feel free to tweet me at the Wildlife BioGal account if you have questions about the broadcast afterwards. So for those of you who haven't watched any of these broadcasts before, we try to make this as engaging a format as possible, and so feel free to send in any questions while we're broadcasting, so that way we can hopefully get you more excited about science and all the cool things that are happening here. So with that, I have my guest, Nicole Dykstra here. So welcome to Scicomm Monday. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background with everything so folks know like where you're going and like where you've been, and so if they find your work really exciting, they can say, hey, that's the way I want to go, that worked for you. So
I actually came back to science a little bit later than many of my peers, many of the people I went to high school with. Right after high school, I joined the Army. I was in the Massachusetts National Guard for a little while, and then I deployed eventually in 2007. I do public affairs and media relations and kind of a little bit of journalism in the Army. So I deployed in 2007 and remained on active duty for 5 years after that, helping to train other soldiers and service members that were deploying in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. And then I kind of got a little tired of it and wanted to do something different, and I thought I was going to be a veterinarian, like many people I think that love animals as I do. And so I joined a program at Drexel University in Philadelphia. They have, or had at the time, a satellite campus in South Jersey where I was living. And through that program, they have a really awesome co-op which allows you to work in a place for 6 months doing something related to what you want to do when you graduate. So you already can do a little bit of networking while you're still getting your degree, and you also have a little bit of experience to have those sorts of things when you graduate. And for my co-op, I went to the Philadelphia Zoo and got to talk a little bit with the exotic vets there. And but I really was interested in the conservation and also ecology aspects. That's part of the mission for the zoo, trying to educate the public on conservation initiatives as well as just general increasing knowledge about ecology. And I really liked that. They also had a really great program for all of the interns that were working at the zoo, where they brought in speakers every couple weeks. Someone would come in and speak to you about different career fields that they had that related somehow to the zoo. And I was able to meet a really wonderful woman named Virginia Pearson, who was speaking there. She had started the docent program at the zoo, and she was doing research, or is still doing research now, on a herpes virus that affects African elephants at Fox Chase Cancer Center in Philadelphia, which is a human cancer center, and she's working on elephants. And she asked me,
kind of cool.
It was pretty cool. And she asked me if I was interested in working with her lab after I had spent some time talking to her. So I jumped on that and got to do a little bit of cell culture work at her lab. And that was really, really interesting. But I still really wanted to return to animals and collective behavior. And she put me in contact here with Dr. Simon Garnier, and I talked with him and was really interested in what his lab does and the projects he has going on, and that's how I was able to, once I graduated from Drexel, apply for the PhD program here, and I've been here since 2015. Years at 17, 15.
Yeah, that's basically how grad school is. Like, what year is it? I can't remember. It's been so long. It's, yeah, and like 6 months feels like it's been 4 years. Yeah. So Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. Like, I've talked to another researcher from Australia that she spent time in the military. So I'm interested to see, like, how do you feel like that experience has helped you with grad school? Like, do you feel like it's benefited, and do you feel like by being in the military, like, and delaying going into a PhD program, do you think that having that experience has helped you now, or do you feel like it was a detriment because you delayed your educational experiences?
On the one hand, I am a little bit regretful, I guess, if I'm being honest, that, I'm about to be 32 and I'm still, doing this. That is a little bit upsetting for me sometimes, because I feel like, I'm a little bit behind everyone. But on the other hand, the stuff I've done in the military, I think, has given me a lot of useful tools for kind of navigating this experience, which is different, obviously from the military, but in a lot of ways you're still coping with a lot of stress, and you're still working.
Yeah, stress with that.
You're still working with a lot of different personalities that, people with all different life experiences that are, entirely different from your own, and you still have to kind of navigate all of that. And that is really the military in a nutshell. You have this weird environment. Suddenly everyone's sort of navigating together, trying to make it through. So I think in that way, in talking to other people and kind of managing stress levels, and I think that I would like to think that the military has at least set me up a little bit for that. Also in being comfortable with being transient, because I do a lot of sleeping in different places and moving around a lot, and that also, the military sets you up for that really well, I think.
Mm-hmm. You feel like maybe like some of like the discipline and stuff that they give you in the military has helped you to be able to like task manage better with your PhD?
Yeah, I think so. Actually, that is a good point that you bring up. So the military is really good about backwards planning. So you think about what your end goal is, what you would like to accomplish, and then from there, backwards plan, backwards schedule everything, so that way you know how much of a budget in terms of time and energy and resources and things to get backwards all the way to where you are now, and then that allows you kind of to judge whether you're on track or not, depending what the end of your timeline looks
right.
like. So I think that's really useful, because we do that all the time in the military. And also trying to be strict about, like, I'm going to just devote this much time to this thing, and then I have to move on to something else, because you can't allow single issues to eat up all your time. That also the military is very, it instills that in you, I think.
Yeah, it's like, I always wonder, like, those additional skills that you get with the military and other instances that can help you with your career, because sometimes we only just think of the science when it comes to PhD school, but there's all these other side little skills that help you get through your program, and I think a lot of people kind of forget that when it comes to training PhD students, and as you're going through your undergrad and maybe even like your master's before you reach your PhD, to be able to help you manage that and then further manage your career afterwards. So like that's I think one of the nice things. Of course, being an Army brat, I'm gonna be always like pro like everything that anyone learns in the military with the skill set, that I think it really does help you manage that so much better than maybe like if you went straight into a PhD and don't have those skills to manage. I think you're not to say that's always the case with everyone, but maybe you could find yourself like floundering a little bit because you don't know how to manage all of that mass of stuff that happens in your PhD. I mean, there's so much. You're managing people, you're managing resources, like your time and all that. It's just like this rush of everything that comes at you, and to be able to break down what is important, how to handle it. The military definitely, I would think, helps you out with that. So.
That isn't to say that I'm not ever stressed out.
Oh, yeah.
It happens all the time, but it lets me step back a little bit and, like, focus.
Right. But I think it also goes to tell everyone, too, like, if you don't go straight into a PhD program or a grad program from undergrad, and you're doing other career things, you still can, like, get those life experiences either by being in the military or going into the workforce for a while and then going into a grad program. I think it really can help people out and help make their graduate time a little bit more successful because you have that additional skill set. And sometimes it's maybe even just the maturity of it. Like you've grown a couple more years and like learn how the world works versus like if you went straight into it, you're still kind of like, I mean, you could be going into your PhD program when you're 21 if you went like straight from undergrad. That's right. Still pretty young when you look at it, the scale of everything. So yeah, so like, I mean, if you're out there and you haven't jumped straight into your PhD, don't be freaking out about it. Like there's many successful folks, just like Nicole here, who are like making that transition after gaining those additional life skills. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about your research that you're doing? It's in Africa that you're doing it. I mean, that's always like a big buzzword for people who like ecology and science and nature. So
well, as I said, I'm interested in collective behavior and more specifically in animal movements. I last summer was in Namibia in June through just the beginning of August, working on collecting some data in the field in Namibia on a domestic herd of goats and sheep. Or at least that was the plan in the beginning. We ended up having to kind of alter the research plan on the fly. As you know, it doesn't always go as expected, right? So we ended up just focusing on the sheep, which is fine. We're looking at the way this domestic herd is moving through a landscape in the absence of shepherds, so we were letting them do whatever they wanted, forage as they wished. We were only influencing their behavior when they were going into camp, like we would move them out of the camp, but otherwise they were allowed to do, forage as they wished. And we were collecting observational data on a digital ethogram. And we also had GPS collars on them as well, so those were recording all of the spatial information that, as they were moving around. And what we hope to do with that is to look at the ways that leaders are able to influence the movement of the group and what happens when you have leaders that are not agreeing. Okay. So if you have two different individuals that are trying to go in different directions, how that's going to influence the efficiency of the group that's moving about this area foraging. And I also, while we were there, we got some really beautiful still imagery. We contracted for a survey, a land survey, and the resolution is so fine on these images. It's so much better than what you could get from satellite imagery.
So what were you using, UAVs?
No, he had a plane. The guy had an actual plane.
All right.
And he flew over, and there's like nearly 3 centimeter resolution on the pixels.
That's pretty good.
It's pretty crazy. So I'm hoping that, because I have a bit of experience using ArcGIS, that I can, associate their movements with the vegetation in the area on a finer scale than would ever be possible with 250 meter resolution or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. Even like 30 meter resolution, right. It still is like pretty bad of like trying to like tease apart like those smaller like little things. But yeah,
if you zoom way into the images, they're so beautiful. Like you can see tracks in the sand. The images are so they're incredible. They're really beautiful. So we can see exactly when, because we have their movement information, exactly when they were on a trail moving around versus when they were stopping and eating from an actual bush that we can see in the image. It's really cool.
Yeah, there's researchers down at University of Florida that they use UAVs for monitoring animal populations, and they can get it down to a centimeter, and they're actually able to measure the length of the alligators out there with precision, and it's so cool, like what you can do with that imagery nowadays because you're getting that better resolution to do things. I mean, being able to see tracks as they're like,
it's amazing.
Cool. Yeah. So like these herds and stuff, like what areas do they like to go to? Like you're talking about like figuring out like what vegetation that they're going into, like where would you normally find them?
The goats and the sheep?
Yeah.
Well, they so as I said, they were domestic species. So the field site that we were at, the owners of some of the surrounding areas, a lot of them have either cattle or goats or sheep. Okay. They have agricultural herds, and so they allowed us to use their goats and sheep to put the collars on. Mm-hmm. In that area, it's very rocky desert type.
Okay. Yeah, because that's what it's like. I mean, I think of goats and sheep around here, and I'm like, oh, I know they're out in like these nice little pastures. I'm like, but I'm thinking Africa, like, how many nice little pastures are there out there? And so, like, where are they actually feeding and going? So
yeah, so there were little grassy areas. The time that we were there was what would be during their winter, so there was kind of lower amounts of vegetation because there hadn't been rain in some time. They don't expect rain until what would be kind of our spring, and so there was limited vegetation, but there are grassy areas and there are sort of rocky hills where they can go and eat from like scrub brush and that sort of thing, and whatever trees also that they can reach as well. Sometimes they'll pull down from the trees in the area, but a lot of the vegetation there has very low moisture content because it's such a dry area that they did a lot of roaming around to find stuff to eat.
okay, so like, how good were the people there with like being willing to let you do the research? Were they really accepting it, or did you have any sort of like, you know, pushback of it? Like, I mean, because sometimes like we go into new areas and like we want to do science, do that. Like sometimes people are a little hesitant. So like I'm wondering like how welcoming was the situation?
I think that the gentleman that let us use his members of his herd for this research, I mean, he didn't maybe fully understand what it was that we were doing initially, but he was willing to let us, you know, put the collars on his animals.
Mm-hmm.
He did. I actually got an email just I think on Friday. It was asking if we had some photos of it that he wanted to share with some of his friends and colleagues there, of us, you know, out with the herd. So while I mean, he wasn't any ecologist or anything like that,
Sure.
or even any kind of a scientist, but he was willing to let us you know, use his animals and was very helpful when we needed stuff. It was a neat experience trying to talk to them about it, and they were just, you know, that for them those are agricultural animals, so
Right.
it was kind of a weird, like, you want to put collars on the sheep, but no,
But I mean, they could get some benefits out there if they see exactly where the sheep are going. If they aren't, you know, say actively, you know, hurting them, you can find out, okay, these are the spots where they're going, and figure out, okay, this is good habitat. We'll release them over here more often, or whatnot. So, with the research that you're doing, you said that you wanted to be able to take that to working with other species such as zebras. So can you tell us a little bit about like how you would translate your work with the sheep and goats to like other animals that are native there, or I guess non-domesticated, would that be the proper term?
Yes, zebra have historically resisted all attempts at domestication. But no, so what I'm interested in really is in mixed species groups. So impala and wildebeest and zebra will often form mixed species groups while they're foraging. And I'm interested in the ways that their foraging behavior is going to change when they're in the presence of the others, and also how they're going to be responding to leadership behavior in the other species, whether they're more or less likely to sort of pay attention and follow along with the leader. Those things are interesting to me. I, without a doubt, will have some observational data collected. So the work I did with the digital ethograms, creating that and using that to, you know, have an observational list of what was happening will definitely be valuable. And I expect, or I plan, I hope, to be able to use drones as well to collect some overhead information about what they're doing. The part where I'm not really sure how I'm going to solve would be the collar aspect, because it's much easier, obviously, to put collars on domestic animals. The goats and sheep didn't really want us to touch them, but at least we could if we needed to, if there's a problem with the equipment. I'm not really certain yet. I have much more research to do in trying to answer that question about whether I would use some sort of data logger, a wearable data logger on the zebra. But so I anticipate using drones and observational data.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a question or a comment coming in saying we never thought why we don't see domesticated zebra. If I could actually read what I'm seeing on the screen here, and yeah, I mean that is interesting because like I mean we've domesticated horses, and you know it seems like well why wouldn't we zebra? Like you do see people occasionally riding zebras and stuff, but the fact that they truly haven't been to the point that they've been domesticated is an interesting topic. So like. What are you like expecting like would happen? Because you were talking beforehand about having multiple species in these herding groups, and like, are you seeing like are there particular species in these herding groups that you're seeing, or like the research has shown previously that they're more dominant? So like you know, are zebras usually the ones that are in command of these multi-species groups? You know, herds or?
I don't know. I haven't seen anyone look at that. In particular, if one species is more of an initiator species than the other. Other researchers have shown that they do adjust their vigilance behavior though. So if you have more eyes, then you have to invest less time individually being vigilant. You can spend more time eating because there are others that are looking out for potential predators, and that the three species will adjust their vigilance at different levels, which is interesting. So the zebra will be less vigilant in the presence of the others, but like the impala won't. So that's kind of an interesting thing. And so I don't know whether anyone's really looked at initiating movement before, but that is kind of one of the things I'm interested in. So maybe that's something I can think about in the future.
So like when you're out in the field out there, like do you have any interesting like field work fail stories of where like just something just kind of like went totally wrong, like you ended up falling backwards into like a mud hole or like whatever else it could be? There's always seems like whenever someone's out there they've got some like interesting fun stories of like yes we the transmitter like went running off, like a hawk picked it up and flew off with it, or any good ones from Africa that you have?
Well, I mean, the first and biggest one, I guess, that comes to mind, I kind of touched on a little bit, but we'd planned that if we separated from the main herd a smaller sub-herd of goats and sheep, that they would stay together because there's so few of them. Like, they would just stay together and go off on their little mixed herd, and then we'd be able to look at kind of these things I'm interested in the wild species, but in these domestics. And then once we took them away from the herd, we had a couple days where they were just like acclimating, getting used to us being around, getting used to not being with the rest. And then after about 2 hours, the goats would go this way and the sheep would go that way. And
you're like, there goes all my study.
And there goes the mixed herd. There was no mixed herd. And they made no effort at all to come back together at all. So that was a really challenging and kind of frustrating thing to try to rework the study in an area we had very limited internet access, so it's not like we could go and find other papers or things to like how are we going to salvage this, really? Like, we're already in the field, we have to we're running out of days, we have to salvage something. We didn't have electricity at night, for example. Everything was solar, so we were sending begging emails back here, like, please find me some papers that are related to sheep leadership or something, so we can try to, have a new plan.
Issue,
So after 3 days of acclimation, we suddenly had to revamp kind of the whole thing. That was, I guess, maybe the biggest horror story. I guess that was a scary thing.
Yeah, it's like two past a verge in the wood, and both my herds go the opposite way. And it's like, come on.
Yes, they never came back together.
So, like, how many, like, did that happen just once, or was that, like, something that would happen quite a lot?
We hoped that it was just like a weird, like, oh, this is like just a fluke. Like, we'll just artificially herd them back together because we are still in our acclimation period, right? They're getting used to everything. We had those 5 days built in. So Lisa, she's a postdoc for my lab, Lisa O'Brien. She and I brought them back together. I'm like, all right, we'll try again. And 30-40 minutes, it split apart again. So we're on the radio. It's like, okay, we're going to wait 30 minutes. We're going to bring them back. And then we would try that. And we did 3 days of that and finally had to give up. Like, they just would not stay together. They wouldn't. So we tried, but and each morning was like a little sooner. They would just split apart and just do their own thing.
It's like they're just messing with you. Like, like, darn it. Someone paid you guys to, like, mess with us. That's supposed to be what happened. So if you have any questions for Nicole and her research, make sure you send those in, and we're game for answering all those fun Africa, zebra, domesticated animal questions that you have. So yeah, tell us a little bit about life here as a PhD student. How is the Rutgers and NJIT? I think because you're a Rutgers student, but all of your research and your advisors, you said, are at NJIT. So like, tell us a little bit how that works, because not every university kind of has like that dual university combined program. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. When I was still at Drexel, one of my favorite professors there had actually graduated from this program, this federated department of biology here between Rutgers, Newark, and NJIT. And she, said that this is really something that could be great. You should, look into this. And what I found being here is that you have this really great community between the two universities. So you have you can share the facilities. You have access to both of the student life type things. Like I can go to both of the gyms or both of the libraries, and that's really cool. But I really love having access to just so much extra knowledge between the two universities. We're also able to take advantage of Rutgers New Brunswick and Rutgers Camden. The other Rutgers New Brunswick is the main campus, but they have another smaller one in Camden. So if there are other classes that you want to take that aren't offered here, because we are a small department here in Newark, you can go to those other campuses and take classes there, which I think is just amazing. You have so many resources at your disposal. And so I really, I have never been or seen or been a part of a federated department before, but it's really been a neat experience. I really enjoy it here. Newark is a fun city. I like being so close to New York City, and there are nice stuff here.
Which, for all of you who haven't been watching, it's just like right out there, and I'm going to totally take advantage of the fact. I'm still excited that we're actually this close to New York. So yeah, you see the skyline beyond the first set of buildings there? That's New York City. That's how close we are. So yeah, I think that this might be a place for you to come hang out. So yeah, I do find it interesting, like where my university is. We're in the middle of nowhere, so all of you who are here, it's probably best this way. So we're like about here in Michigan, which is almost the kind of middle of nowhere. There's not a lot around. The closest big city is about an hour away. And so here you guys have so many opportunities for different things. There's a bunch of different universities around. I assume like you guys probably have more access to different colleagues at those universities. And then just the other thing too is just life in general. Like say you want to go to an event, or there's so many sports teams around here, or like if you want to go to, I don't know, Broadway's just right over there.
Yes.
That's kind of cool. So like we have to wait till like they go on tour around to be able to see that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of neat opportunities that you have when you're around a bigger metropolitan area like this. So how have you found like having your field work so far away from campus? Because like a lot of folks, they can drive an hour or two to get to their field sites, versus with you have to fly to another continent. So like how long are you in Africa for when you're doing this research? Like do you get like several months there? Are you there for a couple of weeks? Like how does that go?
So when I was there last summer, I was there just for about 2 months. So it's not a lot of time. And so that puts the added pressure on. Like the clock is ticking. I only have just this very small window to collect all, everything that I'm going to use really for the next year before I'm able to go back again. And so I am envious of my colleagues who work on systems that are here. There's a lot of...
I like the side eye that we're giving over here.
I truly mean that. So I think that's really cool that they take advantage of this urban setting and get to do some research on organisms that are right here in our backyard. But it's neat and really fun to travel as well, and I quite enjoy going away to a place where there's no electricity at night, and I have to go to sleep when the sun goes down because it's just me and my flashlight. Otherwise, I was sleeping so much when I was in the field because there's nothing to do at night.
Yeah, you can't be on your phone tweeting in the middle of the night.
No internet. No internet. It's nothing to look at. So that's nice too, and it's really cool to go away to places you've never been before, and meet people you wouldn't otherwise. So there are pros and cons, I guess, for all things.
So like what was like the best part of going to Africa for your field research besides the whole getting to like sleep at night? Like what was like the most, like, did you meet someone like really great there? Like, you know, what was it just, or was it just being like, I'm actually in Africa and this is amazing, and seeing like all the animals you see on Discovery Channel?
It was really cool to just be in Africa. I, you know, had never traveled there before, and that in and of itself was really neat. I also drove a car on the opposite side of the road. This customary in the U.S.
How hard was that? I'm always worried about it. Like, say if I go to like somewhere else, it's like
shifting left-handed was a little weird because the driver's side is on the other side as well, and it's kind of like when you are learning how to drive for the first time, when you're aware of everything. It's like that again. Like every intersection I came up on, I had to think, like, or after I make it through the intersection, which side and what lane am I going to end up in every time, because you have to go against your muscle memory, right? So that was a neat thing too, and I really enjoyed the field team that was there. They were wonderful. They were research assistants from Scotland and from Great Britain and Australia, and a couple from the U.S. as well. And they had just such a great experience, previous experiences that I was able to learn from them, and it was wonderful. We had such a great field team. I loved being there with them and learning with them. So that, I guess, yeah, the people that I met there were so amazing. I had a great time.
Great. Well, I think we're just about out of time here, so if you have any questions, if you're watching this on replay, definitely feel free to either tweet at Scicomm Monday, make sure you're following the hashtag Rutgers NJIT at Scicomm, or feel free to tweet me at my personal handle at wildlifebiogal.com, and we'll try to get those questions over to Nicole here, so that way she can answer them on that back end of viewer engagement. And then just a reminder, we'll be live again in 15 minutes or so, talking with Huri, who does cell biology, so that should be a fun little shift from all the ecology folks over here. She's got a big smile over there, so like I am half like wanting to like just go ahead and flash it over there and make her be live right now, but we'll let her wait. So, but yes, definitely big thank you to Nicole for coming on and talk about her work. Like it's always neat to hear about people's experiences, especially when you get to go to those cool locales of like, you know, Africa, or, you know, just out of the way places that people don't always get to go in their daily lives. So for everyone out there, like I said, if you have any questions, make sure you follow up with us on Twitter, and then stay tuned for the next broadcast coming up shortly. So I hope you guys have a great afternoon.